heart and soul, I am a poet, so I love the idea that this was based off a poem. I really am
Hmm.
looking forward to peeling back all of the layers. So
Okay.
thank you so much for taking a minute out today for the show.
Thank you. Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, you bet. So let's get into there's beauty enough in being here. And before we do that, I want to know 5 years ago, this pandemic was changing all of our lives and especially altering the courses of what musicians were doing. How did you get through that era and how has it influenced the way that you create and live in 2025?
Oh wow. It's a big question. Well, for me, interestingly enough, just when I was living here in Toronto and when the pandemic hit, well during the first few months of the pandemic, I actually interviewed for and got the um a full-time gig at York University in Toronto where I'm a professor in music and so it was a I had finished my doctorate in jazz performance at the University of Toronto a couple of years before. So pandemic hit in a way like I was very lucky to be able to have the opportunity to work at York and to work with students, of course, all virtually for that first year. Um, so in that respect, I mean, to be direct from a financial standpoint, it was I consider myself very fortunate at that time, and that has been wonderful. I think I think musically, obviously, it was a period where, because the inability to perform and travel for a long time was a challenge, especially since I had a couple of projects that were just taking off from a touring perspective. So, you know, um, since then things have picked up, and I've been gratified by the fact that in some respects I think there has been, I think, more of an appetite for an appreciation of live performance than there was pre-pandemic, and that is a real plus. I'm seeing it in our communities. So I think from that perspective, it's been great. The other thing that I would say is, and I don't know if this is just if it's pandemic related or if it's just different periods in your life, but it certainly provided an appreciation for investing in recording projects, which of course had been a big part of my life up until that point, but also seeing all the possibilities of collaboration virtually or over distance, not virtually, but collaboration through distance, and kind of like investing my energies creatively, also a great deal more in recording projects, which are really gratifying to present. So,
Right on. Well, this album is based off a poem, and
Mhm.
I'd like to know when you first read this poem, why it's resonated, and why you've taken that baton to make a full album dedicated to it.
Yeah, well, I came across the poem actually attending a class a few years ago. Well, actually, not attending a class, listening to a talk, like an online talk by a Buddhist teacher named John Peacock, and and he actually shared the poem in the context of his presentation, in the context of his talk, and Fernando Pessoa is the poet. He's a Portuguese poet from the early part of the 20th century, was not a Buddhist. And although he was influenced, the poet, that is to say, by some Buddhist thought. So it's not surprising to see the resonances. But basically, what struck me so powerfully about this poem, which is called Beyond the Bend in the Road, is that it's a very simple and straightforward poem. The language is extremely plain. It's very matter of fact, but there's this key two lines in the middle of the poem that say, let's pay attention only to where we are. There's enough beauty in being here and not somewhere else. And that struck me at the time that I heard the John Peacock recite the poem. And it stayed with me for days, for weeks, for months, because because both on a kind of existential level, of course, the idea that the only moment we actually truly have, is the present moment. We certainly don't have the past, and we don't know what the future will bring. So what we have is right now. That if we the task, the challenge and the task and the difficulty is to be able to actually see the present moment as beautiful, or as enough, right? As enough, which is not easy sometimes, is sometimes really difficult. Um, so that really spoke to me on an existential level, but on a musical level, jazz, which is improvised music, which is so much about the present moment. Um, this poem also spoke to me about, what is so beautiful in my view about jazz, which is that when you improvise, you can only control what you play right now. Let's say you played something a moment ago that you didn't think was so great, or you didn't love. You can't do anything about that. And if you focus on that, what you will play in the future is also going to suffer. So it's really about staying in the moment as best as you can. So anyway, the poem inspired me. It inspired the title track of the album, and that from there, kind of things took shape.
I remember one night in my 20s, I got stuck because I've written poetry my whole life. I love it. It's been just kind of it's almost like a poor man's therapy, so to speak, in a creative, wondrous way. And I was thinking about how, as much as we want to be static, everything is moving all the time. There's molecules in leaves, there's cells within us. Nothing stops. So the notion of that line that you're bringing up is, it's hard for us to be in a level of stasis because we're always, as evolutionary Darwinian Galapagos descendants, always wanting to get to that other place, whether it's achievements or the next meal
Mm.
or a drink of water. There's always that restlessness that goes into it. And I think the beauty and the metaphor and all of it is that jazz, especially live, teaches us to just sit in that listening room and be in Buddha and be in that moment of not affecting anything and just letting life unfurl. And I think that's the beauty of what you just talked about. And if we can capture that, I think that's the backbone of jazz.
Yeah, I do agree with you. I really think that the power of, I think when music really, I mean, music can achieve different things for people, right? And I don't want to dismiss that either. I think there are many, music can serve many different purposes and can mean different things to different people in different cultures. But I will just say one of the things that it can achieve that I think is really powerful is when you're experiencing music as a listener or as a performer, and you get this feeling that somehow everything stops, that and your mind goes blank in a good way. That is to say, you're not thinking about anything. You're just experiencing what it's like to be in this moment, to feel the song, to listen to the song, to the piece, whatever it is. That is a very, I think that is a very powerful experience that you can have through music as a listener or as a performer. I mean, other things in our life can give us that experience, like when we see a beautiful scene, a mountaintop, or an ocean, view, or whatever. But but music, in my view, some of the best music that that's what it can do, and I think that it really connects to what you just said. Yeah, that idea.
So speaking of this journey of loving this art form, how did you get into music? How did you specifically get into jazz and evolve to where you're at today?
Well, when I was when I was 10 years old, um, uh, well, I did actually enjoy singing in choir in elementary school, even before I was 10. But when I was 10, my next door neighbor was studying piano, and my next door neighbor and I were best friends. We played basketball every day. And I wanted to study piano too, because he was studying piano. So I told my parents, I wanted to study piano, and I got a piano for my 10th birthday. And lessons started at that time. And my path was a little bit unconventional, I guess you could say, in the sense that um, around the age of 12, I went to study with a classical teacher, and I didn't really like it at all. So my father found a very young jazz pianist in town who was a 18 or 19 years old at the time and was a friend of my of my brother's, and I started taking jazz lessons really without any classical training at the age of 13. And so my foray into jazz was pretty early in that respect. And actually some of my classical training came a little bit later on. When I was 16 or 17, I started to take classical lessons as well. So jazz has been there since really almost since the beginning, as a music that I love, that I studied, and kind of, from there, I went to university, played professionally in the San Francisco area for a long time before moving to Toronto.
So, what is it that gets you up every day to create this music? What is the motivation? What do you like the best about being a professional musician?
Wow, that's such a great question. Honestly, for me, uh, just playing the piano, composing, creating music on the piano by myself is enough. And in a way, it sounds pretty simple and straightforward, but what excites me, what gets me up in the morning, what I in some ways love the most is the creative impulse of sitting at the piano and improvising, or composing, or even just reading through some other pieces, but just the experience really of creating music. And and in some ways that's for me, uh you know when I'm happiest professionally. I mean, I love all the facets of my career. I love performing with other people. I love I love I love hearing my music played if it's like a piece that I wrote that doesn't involve piano. I love all those aspects. I love teaching, but at the core, what I love the most is, and what satisfies me the most is just to sit at the piano by myself and play. Um,
I love it. So, I'm curious, this love of performing on stage comes from a spark early on. What was the first either live jazz show or live music performance you saw that made you think, I need more or I want to be up there one day?
oh wow. I have a hard time remembering a specific perform, because I think there were some that were so early that they were very formative. There are many that I can think of that came later when I was already an aspiring young pianist and already had that spark of wanting to perform. So to answer your question, I really have to think back, and
Sure.
it's going to be maybe it's not going to be connected to jazz, but I have to say when I was 10 years old, no, 11 years old, in fifth grade, I'd already started to play piano. We were living in Philadelphia for a year. And my mother took me to see Les Mis, the Broadway production.
Yeah.
And I have to say that left an indelible mark on me. I remember buying the cassette tape, and I would sing those songs pretty much nonstop after that. I don't know that that directly correlates to wanting to perform, but it definitely correlated to this spark of excitement of what it can feel like to be in a space and to experience kind of a musical production and to get that excitement. Of course, later on there were some really significant experiences of seeing people like Herbie Hancock and Keith Jarrett, seeing them perform live, and of course those were really transformative for me. But by that point, I was pretty serious about playing
Yeah.
jazz. Yeah.
The one thing about this modern world, more specifically in America now, is that there's all this stress and tension from politics and what's happening globally. Of course, what we've done to Canada has been atrocious. My question to you is this. One of the things, and I ask you this because I moderated a panel with the Headhunters earlier this year, and
Mm.
Donald Harrison explained this notion of between both performer and audience feel this nirvanic realm of escape when they get into the throes of a good concert.
Mm.
So my question to you is this: is there anything in your brain with the stress of this modern world we live in that's a part of what you're trying to present and help people escape or have a moment to just kind of go into a world to not have any of the headlines or anything that's a part of our world collectively go in there? It's just pure music.
Mm. Yeah, it's a great question. I think to go back to the first question that you asked about the pandemic, the thing that connects for me is the value of live performance or of experiencing music live in the room with other people. Um, the communal aspect of that, but also the aspect where I think even aside from the political landscape that you talk about and the challenges of our time, even just thinking about it from the perspective of how dependent so many of us have become on our devices and how much time we spend in front of our screens, and how uncommon it has become just to listen to an album from start to finish, or to go to a concert, and to not look at your phone, and to not take any photos, and to not take any videos, and to just be, and to not document that you were there, just to experience it. And I think in a way there's something countercultural about the even just the idea of creating an album where and presenting live music that demands or requires this kind of attention, this kind of putting aside our distractions. I think there's something about that communal aspect that I really value, and so uh I think it can be a kind of antidote to some of what we are experiencing. Yeah, collectively.
So let me ask you this. At the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, fans, everyone on the bandstand, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Oh my goodness. It's so deep. Um,
This is the therapy part of the interview.
um, wow. Um, I, I don't know how to answer that question. Um, my, it, I'll just say this. It's interesting. I've been reading, before I answer your question, perhaps to buy myself some time, I'll just say that the poet Fernando Pessoa that wrote this poem that I was inspired by. He's a very interesting character in that he wrote his poems under different heteronyms, and that's basically the idea that he created different characters, different poets. So he wrote these different poems, and different selves of himself would write different kinds of poems. And so in a way he was basically suggesting the idea that we're always multiple selves, that there are multiple selves to us, that we present differently, obviously, to our family, to our friends. Professionally, we're a different self.
Yep.
There's the private self, there's the public self. There are all these different personas that we take on. I mean, Shakespeare talked about it too when he said all the world's a stage, right? Like that we are actors in the world, that we're always acting in some respect. So to answer your question, it's really difficult. I guess all I can say is from a that I aspire both musically and otherwise in the way that I live my life. I'm trying to orient myself to kind of looking at life as a practice, and at music making as a practice. In other words, not as much as possible to think not about product, but about process. So making music to me is ultimately about process. It's about Yes, I love having the CD done and complete and recorded and released and shared with the world. And I love love doing these interviews, and I love, getting reviews and so on and so forth. But the thing that I loved the most is to make the music with the people that I made it with. And but I also recognize that it's a practice, that it's not perfect, that there's always room to grow. And so I hope to learn things from this experience into the future. And I think likewise, I kind of think of myself trying to navigate life in that way, as a practice, right? As a way, how can I be more aware tomorrow? How can I be more mindful of my interactions with other people tomorrow? How can I, etc.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I look at it. I don't know if that's actually how I am, but that's
Yeah.
how I would like to be.
Totally. No, I get it. I absolutely get it. So if anyone wants to pick up a copy of There's Beauty Enough in Being Here, catch you live, any of the other good business in your world, where do they go?
Well, my website is Noam, NOAMLEMISH.com, noamlemish.com. You can obviously listen to the music on all the various streaming platforms. There's beauty enough in being here. And you can also go to Bandcamp. That's a great place to buy music if you want a physical copy, or if you want to download the music to have it. Then you can go to Bandcamp. So I think it's noamlemish.bandcamp.com. And of course, I'm on social media and the whole bit. So
Right
yeah,
on. I will put all
yeah.
those links in the show notes. Noam, this has been wonderful. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your time. I
Thanks,
appreciate it.
thanks, Joe. It's been the best interview I've ever had. So
I
thank you
love
very
it.
much.
Absolutely.